Okay, welcome into the shop, everybody. Jumping right into work here on the lathe, one of my favorite machines. We're working on a 4-post bed in walnut. Here's an overall look at the design. It's kind of shaker inspired, as you can tell. We've got some real tricky joinery to do on the headboard on this one. This video is sponsored by my good friends at Simply Safe. Remember, there's no safe like Simply Safe. So we're on the lathe. The lathe is one of my favorite machines, but also one that I just, I struggle with. I've got a lot to get to learn still, skill set wise on the lathe. But I start with a template. Make all my templates right off my CNC. Use Fusion 360. I get a full scale template of the part I'm going to make, and then I can scale off of that using my calipers and build my piece on the lathe that way. It's not the fastest way to operate, but when you're doing a one-off custom piece, you don't need to set up like duplicators or anything of that nature. This works great for me. It's a good system. So once I turn one post, I can really just work off of that post and kind of copy it. But we got 4 posts here. The headboard ones are going to be longer. Obviously, footboards are going to be shorter. So we're working on the headboard post here, just working on the foot taper. This is a real shaker-inspired detail right here that comes from chairs. You see it a lot in shaker chairs. Just kind of a little cove scoop into a taper. And I've put that detail into the bottom of this bed, and I think it's a cool little look. So once we kind of dial in that bottom detail at the foot of the post, we're going to move into a big taper that goes all the way down the length to what I'm going to call like an egg-shaped detail at the top of the post. So this is the detail of that egg-shaped thingamajig at the top of the post. I don't know what to call that. I worked this down. I'm taking my time on this because this is not a detail that I've turned a lot. But there's a really important transition from the main post where it tapers down into that kind of ball detail. So that's kind of what I'm working on right here. And these parts can be really tricky when you're diving into that cove because you can catch and pretty much ruin your part. So I'm just taking my time and very slowly shaping this into what we're calling an egg. Okay, so I do quite a bit of sanding here. That's the nature of not being great on the lathe. I've got a board here I kind of use as a platen. This really helps me on my tapers, knock down high spots and get a really smooth, even surface all the way across the length of that taper. You got a pretty long post here, so that block will help. A cool shot of the sawdust coming off the lathe with the light there. And it's never fun sanding on the lathe. It's a dusty mess, but it's got to be done. Okay, let's take a quick break to talk about today's sponsor, Simply Safe. Now, I originally found Simply Safe because my shop flooded and I was trying to find a way to monitor the shop from a flood, and I stumbled across Simply Safe. Now, that is just a very, very tiny thing of what Simply Safe is. They are a comprehensive home security system that offers 24/7 monitoring of your home. I've had this system hooked up on both my house. This is my shop. My house is back there for about 4 years. I have 2 systems and I monitor my entire property. I've got a doorbell camera that monitors the front of my property. We've got a outdoor camera that monitors our pool, mostly because we want to watch our kids, make sure no one's in the pool area. And then I also have an outdoor camera on my shop here that monitors the back area entry to the shop and the beautiful Argosy that I restored. Now, this is an award-winning home security system, and I recently added their smart alarm indoor camera to my house. The alarm uses the 24/7 live guard protection monitoring, so agents know within 5 seconds there's an intruder to your home. They can speak to that intruder through the camera. The camera has a super loud siren. It stops them in their tracks. It allows the agent to give important data or information to first responders, to the police, about the scene, about what's happening. Now, on top of that layer of protection, one of my favorite things about their system is the incredible app they have where you can access your home security system. You can look at your cameras. You can see a timeline. Anytime there's motion detected by a camera, it automatically notifies me of that. So I always know what's going on at my property. Now, if you're interested in protecting your family like I am using the 24/7 Fast Protect monitoring, now's the time because they're offering my viewers 20% off your home security system when you sign up for a Fast Protect monitoring plan. All you gotta do is go to simplysafe.com/Andy Rawls. The link is in the description, super easy. A big thanks to SimpliSafe for supporting the channel, for helping get this content out. And remember, there is no safe like SimpliSafe. Let's get back to this bed build. Okay, big thanks to SimpliSafe. Took a little break there. Back on the sander. So even though I spin on the lathe and sand on the lathe like that, I still like to turn it off. And while the part's still mounted, just sand it with the grain. This helps knock out some of those really fine cross grain scratches that I really don't like to see. So I'll work it down with some 150 and 220 to get those scratches out. All right, so now here comes the part where we make jigs. We've got to make all the joinery for this is going to be cut on the CNC. So this is a big challenge for me. This is new for me. Generally, I get a little bit too scared to do this. I don't like putting expensive parts up on the CNC and cutting joinery in them because you can screw things up so quick on a CNC, and I'm really good at doing it. There's a lot of little steps you got to stick with, and if you miss something, you can go wrong real fast. But on this project, I built up the courage to cut the mortises and pockets out on all these posts we just turned on the CNC. So first, what we got to do is make a cradle, a jig to hold it, because obviously we can't mount a tapered round part on a CNC and expect to get any good results. So I'm basically building a cradle. So I've drilled out holes in these walnut blocks. I'm cross-cutting to make kind of a guillotine. It's going to build a clamp over the post that we just turned. So those blocks, each block, there's 2 blocks, each is going to have a different diameter hole to fit at a different point on the leg, and that's how we're going to hold it in place. Now a little talk about why I do this. A lot of people would say, well, why don't you cut the mortises before you turn, plug them, and then turn it? That's a great option. If you do that, you can control the grain orientation, but it's a little bit more difficult. Once you turn a part on the lathe and you cut the joinery after, you can really control where the joints go in regard to grain orientation. And that's one reason why I did this way, because I don't want to just randomly put mortises into parts without thinking where it's going, what part of in terms of the orientation of the grain. So another reason is the way we're cutting this joint, we can't plug it. It wouldn't work. So I don't, there's maybe a trick at being able to do this prior and turn it on the lathe. But for me, this is the way it made sense to go. It's just to make a jig and cut it after I turned it, and it worked out great. So what I'm doing here is making sure that my center points are the exact same height off the table. That way I know the center line of my part is right on line, and it's not off left to right, so I'm not cutting mortises that would be creating an angle. Once I get that mounted, I can screw down those guillotines, lock this thing in place, and then here we go. We're going to cut a pocket first, and then we're going to cut 2 mortises. This is going to be for the footboard here. Now the pocket is going to hold that rail, and it's going to fit into this pocket. So that pocket is really the challenge of why I didn't do it prior on the lathe, because how do you fill that pocket effectively? It wouldn't be easy. So once I cut the first one, the real important thing here now is that we orient the next mortise 90 degree to what we just cut. So I put a board in my mortise. I'm going to drop that down. So this may be the only time I've ever used the level on my Starrett combination square, but I'm just using a little bubble level in that thing to make sure that that board is perfectly level. And that's going to allow me to kind of establish that 90 degrees or get it really close. Then we're going to clamp it down with our little guillotine clamps, and then I can bring in the CNC with the Z-axis. So I'm just dropping the tooling down to my board and going back and forth and seeing, you know, how good it's on that part, and making sure that it is perfectly in line with the end of that tooling on the Z-axis. And that's going to ensure that this is 90 degrees to the mortise I'm about to cut. Really important. We don't want to make a bed that has parts that are flaring off at angles and stuff. We got to make sure they're 90 degrees. I got Chester coming to give me a little support. So I am taking my time here, making sure I don't screw all this up. There's a lot of time in this, and one mistake can be very, very costly. So here we go. You'll get a better look at what we did here. So we start with the pocket. That will fit the post, the rail, and then a top mortise and a bottom mortise. These mortises are, I've got a 2 1/4 length tooling here, cut length, so these are going pretty deep. This video is a great look into how you can use modern day technology and old school hand tools, because you're going to see here soon how we have to use a lot of hand tool work to make this, to fit these joints. I'm cutting here in the headboard post. This is the joinery for the headboard. We're creating a joint that will be tight on the top, so the mortise that's getting cut now will get glued, and the one that is below that is going to be a free floating mortise that is not glued. So to the drill press, what we need to do is drill out a hole for bed bolts. All my beds I build using bed bolts from Horton Brasses. I've got a technique that I've learned from the man I worked with prior to starting my own business, and it's just, I think it's a great way to do things, and it's stuck in it, and this is how I like to do it. And this is why I split these mortises, to leave meat in the middle there, because I'm going to drive a bolt through this, and that's kind of how that looks. Now here comes the fun part. I get to spin around and get to find that little tiny little pinhole that came through the tip of that brad point, and then I'm going to chuck up a Forstner bit that's 7/8 and cut out a bigger hole that fits the head of that bolt. And this is tricky here, making sure it doesn't slip and slide, because these holes have to line up. So I got to get the point of that Forstner right into that little hole that the brad point made. And that bolt there, those can be a little tight. So I just chuck it up in a drill. I don't have a great shot of me doing it, and take it over to my disc sander, spin it in the drill, and sand down the head of the bolt. I could take a 1/16 off that pretty quick with some 80 grit sandpaper on my sander. So, all right, I got Judd in here with me. He loves using the spoke shave, so I had to show this. He's complaining right now because it's too loud, which I should be a better dad here and have safety equipment on him. We're going to get him set up. But yeah, back to his spoke shave. He loved to come in, and I actually got him his own spoke shave for Christmas, but true to form, he's already figured out that the Lee Nielsen spoke shaves are better than the one I got him for Christmas. So he always grabs my Lee Nielsen spoke shaves, and he just likes to make things sharp. He likes to make sharp weapons, which is pretty typical of a boy. But while he's over there making his weapon, he even changes spoke shave. It's awesome. I didn't realize he did that. Gosh darn it, that's so cool. So I'm working on the headboard. We're cutting out the profile shapes, get started on this joinery. I've got a jig that allowed me to do this, and there's going to be, we're going to do the other side here in a second. You're going to see a really good look at how it's all done, but for the sake of wanting to kind of show Judd at work here, I had to put these shots in. So he's got his black spoke shave, was the one I gave him. He's got all of my spoke shaves. He's just working through them, man. He's figuring it out, making shavings. Look, he even knows how to use a vise. Pumps me up. He's pretty pumped about that. Now I got to take it away from him and break the tip off of it. All right, so you can kind of get an idea here. I've got the top tenon and bottom tenon. So this is my jig, made it on the CNC. I use a little palm router to establish the profile, cut in about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch deep, take the jig off, take my jigsaw, take out some waste, and then I get the big router, and I think in one pass, there might have been a couple passes, I can follow that initial cut I made and make the profile.
I tell you when you can do it, alright?
Okay, tell me when you're ready. I need my eye protection.
I need my earphones perfection. Right, I tell you when I'm ready. I'm almost ready.
Ready?
Nope, I'm almost ready.
Okay. You get a look here of how I'm just working those. I've worked those cheeks down and made a 1/2 inch tenon. Slowly sneaking up on it. I'm not going to get right to my finished size with the router. I've got a really nice little block hand plane that I can dial the fit in with. And that's what I'm doing here. Pretty much every tenon, mortise and tenon I do, the tenon's going to get fitted with this tool. That's just a great way to do it. The tricky part here, and what's so time consuming, is every part that joins together on this bed is a square part going to a round post. So those pockets we cut, we have to shape the shoulders of all these tenons to fit those pockets. So that's where I talked earlier about how we've got this balance of modern day CNCs with these old hand tools. You couldn't build this bed any other way. So I'm gonna start shaping a radius on the top of this headboard real soon to fit that pocket. Right now I'm just rounding over my tenons. I used a round over bit, and then I'm finishing that with a chisel. Also, a lot of times here I'll just use a rasp to help shape the round on those tenons. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You could square up the mortises or around the tenons. It's really, there's no wrong or right way there. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the tenon size is good, that it fits the mortises. Once we're good there, I'll take a good look at how the shoulders look for the pockets, and I'll start the process of shaping those to fit them in. You can kind of get an idea there of how this is going to work. It's just, you got to kind of slowly sneak up on it. One thing you got to be real careful here is don't force it, because you can chip out those pockets and make it look bad real quick. So we're just going to get into some spoke shave work and start shaping this radius all the way up the curved part of that headboard. And generally, I leave the part thicker than the pocket, so I'll take a hand plane and a few passes on that, I can take down the thickness of that headboard a little bit to fit into the pocket. And this is, I mean, I'm trying to give you an idea of the amount of work this takes in the video without boring the crap out of you, because, I spent a lot of time fitting these, and finally I got it, but for some reason I decided to set my camera up too far away for you to really see it. But we're going to get some shots of this here in a little bit, so it fits in there. And every single part of this bed has to do this. Even the bottom rail, the bed rails, they all have to fit into pockets. So let me be rolling. I did a lot of that. I did a lot of just shaping and fitting. One cool detail here is I left all the tool marks on the headboard. I left all these spoke shave, chamfers, or what do you call them? What is the word I'm looking for? Gosh darn it, my mind's on blank. Whatever, the tool marks, I'm going to call them that. So, went through the process of fitting everything. We're going to glue up. I'm using epoxy here just for the open time, basically. No other advantage to it. The bottom rail is floating tenons, and then as you can tell, when we put glue on this, I'm not putting glue on the bottom tenon of the headboard. We're going to leave that dry, so that gives the headboard a place to move. That mortise in the post is about 3/16 bigger on each side, so that headboard can float. These are the bed rails. They are what connect the footboard to the headboard. She really loved the idea of having soft edges across this bed, no real hard edges. So that's why you see these big radiuses on it. These parts are, I think, 1 1/8, 1 1/4 thick. And we got a 9/16 radius to start. And then we start shaping it and fitting it. I want you to notice, I want you to notice that I used my chisel a lot. I used my chisel on the shoulders of these, the edges. Put a little chamfer all the way around, and what that does is it helps that part slip into the pocket. If you leave a hard, crisp edge there, there's a good chance you're going to damage that pocket, and there's no coming back from that. Once you break the fibers there and crack them, it's a difficult repair. So a good chamfer there will help it slide into that pocket and fit nicely. You see the bed bolt goes in. There's a slot there. I do that on the CNC. I have a program for this that holds the bolt and the nut. And you'll watch here as it'll suck it down and pull it into that pocket. It's a really strong connection. And that's it. So we're going to move on to the supports that hold the mattress supports. So this part here will go on the bed rail and catch the mattress supports, which hold the mattress in place. So I'm drilling holes to attach it to the bed rail. I didn't show, but we did a CNC program where we basically cut dovetails. So I've been doing dovetailed rails here to hold my mattress supports. I think that's a cool feature because it helps keep those bed rails in line both towards the mattress and away from the mattress. Hopefully that makes sense. The dovetails keep it from pulling away, I guess. And you don't have to use any screws or fasteners to put your mattress supports in. When I install these, I go into my Patreon into detail about how to design a bed and the placement of things and the importance of mattress thicknesses and where those land. So when I install these, let's redo that. I'm going to change that. Okay, so I go into detail in my Patreon about designs of beds, the thickness of mattress and how important that is and where you place the mattress. It's pretty in-depth explanation in one of the updates. So if you want to check that out, go support me on Patreon. I appreciate it. This is the mating dovetail cutting on the CNC. It has the dovetail and it has a rabbet. The machine's going to do all that for me. And when you got, I forget how many, 8 to 9 of these to do, it's nice to have a robot doing it. Not 8 to 9. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See how that drops in? It's pretty cool, and it'll hold that rail right in place. I like the look of it too. Now, since we use bed bolts as our attachment, what you end up with, and reason why a lot of people don't like them, is a hole in the footboard post. And this is how we solve that. So I'm going to start with some dividers, just scraping out a little circle here. This is 7/8 of an inch in diameter. We're going to take this to the lathe. First I'm going to knock off the corners on my old Oliver bandsaw that's new to the shop, new to me, but sucker's old. It's been a great little machine. This is not something I would want to do on the 36-inch bandsaw. It would be frightening. So that's why I like having this little saw right here by my workbench, because I can do small little tasks like this safely and efficiently. So once we get all the corners removed, I've got a scraper here, and I'm just kind of angling it to make the cut a little bit easier. You can tell there, just almost using the corner of that scraper to shape down this part to 7/8. And what I'm going to do here is I don't want the whole thing to be 7/8. I want to create a slight taper so it gets thicker and smaller, and so 7/8 kind of hits in the middle of the part. And really the process here is just make some cuts, go test it, make some cuts, and go test it until you get the fit you want. So here it is. It's about what we're looking for. It's just a little bit tight, so what we'll do is take it back to the lathe and get that last little bit with just sandpaper. We'll smooth it out, take any tear out or tool marks out. And obviously I'm using a board here. You wouldn't want to just take a piece of sandpaper right to it with your hands. That would be a bad idea, but we want a board so we keep it nice and flat and even cut across the whole part. So I'm going to put the bolt in to make sure it clears, press it to make sure everything is where I want it, and then we're going to do a little bit of shaping, and we also got to cut a little bit of a notch in it, which we're going to do right now. We just drill a hole in a board, hammer it into that, and take it over to the table saw and use the table saw to cut just a tiny little sliver in it so that we can get an Allen key in there and pop it out when we need to pop it out. Now we get it fitted where we want, and we're going to take, since we got a round post, we got to take a block plane and shape it to the shape of the post. Now it disappears, looks kind of cool. So to get it out, I just use a little Allen key, it'll fit in there, and then you just pull and pop it right out. It's a great way to hide the bed bolts, and it looks clean. It's not the easiest thing to execute, but I've done them enough that I've kind of figured out the process. Okay, so here's a look at the finished product. I've got some really good behind the scenes content over on my Patreon, several shop updates going behind the scenes on a lot of the things on this, in-depth look at the headboard joinery, and then a talk about how the client actually didn't like this bed at first, and how I fixed that. So interesting stuff over there. If you want, go over there and help support the channel by seeing some of the behind the scenes content. As always, appreciate y'all tuning in, and a big thanks to Simply Safe for sponsoring the video. We'll see you guys next time.